Carthage must be destroyed. Today we are going to continue on with our Hail Caesar walkthrough. We're going to talk about supports and support units fighting in an engagement today. But before we get into that, there is one final part from last time that I didn't go over, and maybe I should have, but we're going to do that right now, and it's called closing ranks. Close ranks in Hail Caesar is when a unit is able to use their shields and tighten up, which gives them a higher chance of survivability, but also makes it harder to hit the enemy. Now, only heavy infantry with shields can close ranks. These Samnites here, I usually use them as medium infantry. They cannot close ranks because medium infantry can't do this. Only units like Romans that are heavy with shields, and they have to have shields, can close ranks. So close ranks, what that does is that it gives you a -1 to hit, but it gives you a +1 morale save. So let's say that they were fighting here. We move these Italians up and they're all fighting. These Romans could opt to close rank. Now you cannot do this on the initial round of combat. So after you've done some charging and you've gone into fight, you're not able to close ranks. It's not until the second round and after that you can close ranks. You can only close ranks once per round. So you declare it before the battles, or before that round starts. So say these guys are in their second round, they've been fighting, they're still going at it. The Roman player here in this unit, he says, I'm going to close my ranks. It means all of his hits will be -1. And then his morale save will jump to +1. He'll be saving on a 3 and up instead of a 4 and up, okay? And close ranks can only happen in close combat. You can't use it for shooting. And I should mention here, close ranks, it doesn't matter if you're disordered or shaken or in a normal state. You can always close ranks in a fight no matter what's going on. You just have to declare it before any blows are struck in the melee. So here we've got a big old engagement. So a whole bunch of people fighting here. Now, if you guys remember that an engagement is when units are either fighting or supporting. And here we have 3 units that are fighting and we have 4 units that are supporting. Basically, you have this unit and these 2 units which are fighting. Their center fronts are touching. And then in the back here, you have a Roman unit touching this small unit and then a Velite unit touching this Roman unit. Behind these infantry here, behind these Italian infantry here, we have some more Italians supporting them. And then on the flank here, we have an elephant supporting them as well. And that's what supports look like. They are units that come alongside the flanks of a fighting unit or are behind a fighting unit, adding extra attacks to the ongoing engagement. You can't always support a unit. There are a list of units that cannot be supported. They might be too small, they might be too insignificant, they may be too spread out to actually support, or there might be something like a wall in the way. Units that are fighting in open order. Here these medium infantry have charged these open order Velites. Now these Velites didn't flee, they decided to stay for whatever reason. Maybe they think they're lucky, they can survive an attack. But if these guys are here and fighting and they survive a round, these Romans back behind them cannot move in to support them. Open order troops that are in combat cannot ever be supported, okay? So they're on their own. Even other open order units can't help them. They're too spread out to give them proper support. The other thing that can't be supported is artillery. If an artillery piece is caught in melee on its own, then I'm sorry, it has to fight on itself. Doesn't matter what size it is. Wagons and baggage cannot be supported. They're just too small, so they can't be supported. Cavalry can't be supported by elephants. So if you've got cavalry fighting, your elephant can't go in to help them. I guess the elephants are too scared. There's a history where elephants get freaked out by horses, and in this case, seems to be the same. So if cavalry are fighting, an elephant cannot move in to support. Units and buildings. If units are in a building, obviously there's walls around them, so your troops can't go alongside the wall and support the guys between the wall. The only people that can help a unit support, or rather, the only units that can support a unit in the building are other units that are in the building with it. So if you have a really large building and there's 2 units inside, then yes, they can help each other. But otherwise, an outside unit from that building just can't support a building inside of it. There's some formations in the game that we haven't gone through. I may not. It's more advanced reading depending on the army. But square can't be supported, and the testudo, the Roman formation, can't be supported. There's also the wedge formation, which I won't get into. You can get the rule book and look at it yourself. It's an advanced rule. It also cannot be supported unless there's units within the wedge. You can look it up yourself. And obviously scythed chariots cannot be supported. Would you run in and support a scythed chariot as its scythes are whirling around and cut you up? No. So those are units, just the list of units that just cannot be supported in Hail Caesar. Most units will be able to move into support though, and what does that look like? It's something like this. Like these guys say are fighting in an engagement here. During the command part of your phase, you will either order your troops to move in to support a unit through a command or through initiative if they're close enough. So if you say gave maybe it's the command phase, but before the commands go out you do initiative, these guys say we're going to move in because we're 12 inches away to support them, and then these guys here also say, well, we're just going to move in to support them along the flank. That's perfectly fine. Now this unit has two supports on there. You can tell here they're supporting because their center fronts don't line up to the edge of the unit. This one looks like it does, but from its center front where I actually have it, it's not. So the best it could do is support this middle unit here. So those two guys would move up and support it, and that would be fine. So in the command phase is when units are going to move in to support things. Let's say that in this scenario here, let's say for whatever reason, maybe we use the elephant. The elephant seems a little more intimidating than light infantry. Let's say this elephant is here and he decides to charge. The other way your units get into support is if they're already in a position to support. So this elephant charged this Roman unit here, and these other two Roman units which aren't engaged, or they're not charged rather, they are engaged now, they're in an engagement now, but they weren't charged. They are side by side to the central Roman unit, so now they're part of this engagement as supports. So your units will either become supports by moving into position in an already existing engagement, or the enemy will charge and your support units will be in a position that are ready to support, basically. Now remember, if this had been a bigger unit, he may have to see if he's charging a 2-on-1. I just used a smaller unit here for the example. If they were all standard size units and he charged dead home on a standard unit, it would work out the same. Now there is a list of units that cannot move in to support things, and also they cannot support in any circumstances. I say this now because there are situations where you might have a unit that's normally not supposed to support, but it was positioned in a way that it can still support. And I'll go over some examples here with you as I go through this list. So very obviously the first one that can't move to support is engaged units, okay? So say this elephant charges those Romans again there. That Roman unit is engaged. It can't leave the combat to go support something else. Once a unit's engaged, it's committed until the end of that combat. This includes the two support units, the Romans here. They had no choice. They were lined up in that manner on the Carthaginian turn. The Carthaginians charged there. They're touching the sides here. They're in support now, okay? It doesn't say they have to join in the rule book, but generally you probably want to, just to wipe this elephant right out. But I would say, yeah, they're in support here now. And once these guys are in support, they're not leaving the combat to support something else. They have to see the combat through, okay? So in an engagement, a unit can't move out to support something else. Okay, let's say that the Romans want to move these guys into support, but they're ultimately not able to because they're disordered. They would not be able to move to support because they're disordered. They can't take orders anyway, okay? So disordered units cannot move into support. They can't take orders to do anything. They can't do initiative or move in the command phase. If a unit is disordered though, and it's already at the side of a friendly unit that's charged, they can join just because the position they are when they started. So if they're in a position to, then they can join as a support unit. But if they have to take an order to move into support and they're disordered, then they can't. Okay, and then there's other formations that can't support things, like a column, a square, or a wedge, okay? A column is in a line of troops marching. They're not ready to go rush into battle line and throw in their support, so they can't support things. A wedge formation can't support things because I'm not going to get too much into it. It simply can't unless there's units inside of it again. And a square can't support things because it's too focused on multiple fronts to properly put its support in, okay? A column or a wedge could be given orders to change position, move, and then go to support something. But a square is too complex to move into support. If you're in a square, you have to completely form into a battle line, and that's your turn. There's nothing else you can do. Medium and heavy artillery cannot support heavy units. And yeah, they're basically the two units in the game, along with scythe chariots, that really don't they don't get support. They don't give support, okay? The exception here is that light artillery can move in to support other formed units. You'll often see Roman players have a line of legionnaires, and a scorpion, which is light artillery, will come up alongside or behind them and add their support attacks, which is fine if it's light artillery. Medium and heavies can't do that. But the light artillery cannot be supported. If the light artillery gets caught in melee, nothing can support it. So keep that in mind if you're using light artillery to join in as support. Scythe chariots have scythes. Nothing's going to support them, and they're definitely not going to go support something else. So they're on their own for obvious reasons. And again, the elephants here cannot move in to support cavalry. If a cavalry unit is alongside an elephant and they're charged, the elephant still cannot join that combat, okay? Cannot join the support. Elephants are just too scared. So elephants in no circumstance can ever support cavalry. Now it does say cavalry can move in to support elephants. I guess the elephant's engaged and doesn't notice the cavalry. But yeah, an elephant can never be a support for cavalry in any instance, even if it was lined up to do so, like shaken and disordered units, okay? You don't want an elephant supporting anyway. They usually have a short range attack of 1, so put them in as a fighting unit. Don't let them support anyway, guys, unless you're really desperate for that 1 extra attack. Okay, let's talk about positioning actual support units. For units that want to support on flanks, they have to be aligned to the front of the unit that they are supporting. The rules also say on flanks they have to be touching. I have heard some folks say that they don't have to be touching, but actually the rulebook does say that all support should be touching the unit they're supporting, their edges here. So these two units are fighting here. The Romans want some support against this small light infantry unit. So what would happen here is that, let's do this, let's put this unit here, and it's the Romans' command turn. They say, we're going to move up this unit to support this unit here. They would move up and they should be touching alongside them, and they should be aligned to their front like so. This unit here could also move in and support as long as they're aligned up to the front. Now you'll notice here I purposely kind of hinge these guys in at an angle. This is perfectly fine, like maybe proximity is preventing them from turning or something and they have to move straight towards another enemy. Maybe there's an enemy behind them here. But if they're slightly hinged on the angle, don't be too nitpicky, as long as they're touching on the flanks. As for rear support, I'm going to use my triarii here. Units in rear support, when they come in support, again they have to be touching. But let's say that they're given the order to move forward, then they'd come up behind there and they'd be touching the back of the unit they're supporting. Now they don't have to be exact perfect either, but most of that unit has to be covering the frontage of the unit they're supporting. And I think ideally their center front will be touching the back. So say these triarii came in like this to support. This is perfectly fine as the majority of this unit is covering the majority front of that unit, and their center fronts in the back are touching. You can only ever have a maximum of 3 supports, ever. Either flank can have 1 support and the rear can have 1 support. So only 1 support per rank and 1 support for a rear. Okay, sometimes when you play, you're gonna have a situation where you have 3 units lined up like so, these Roman units here, and you have a single enemy in front of you, okay? You wanna charge, but instead of just giving units order by order, you decide that I want them all to charge in. You can do this where you tell all 3 units in a divisional order. You keep seeing my hand here today. You can tell all 3 units in a division order to charge a single unit. So what would that look like? Say it's the command phase, you roll successfully to charge, you push in with your main unit, but these guys are following with them alongside them. These guys are all told to charge. They can't fully charge, but what units will do is they'll try to follow the order as closely as possible. They move along in that division order. These guys connect, and these two act as the fighting unit, and these guys charging with this unit charge in as support. Okay, so they join the engagement as support. They're not going to be adding a charge bonus to any attacks they give to this fight. Only the fighting unit does that. But these guys will come up with them and support. So you can order in a divisional order a whole bunch of units to charge one unit. One unit in the engagement will be the fighting unit most likely, unless you've got two small units on a standard front. But anyone else joining along the side of them, they'll become support. So you can get a whole bunch of guys into one engagement that way. Now the rulebook goes through a situation that I don't often see in games, but you can actually, this is kind of an exception to joining combat, but normally in combat you have to charge to get into it. But there are situations where you can move into support and join the combat as a fighting unit. And it usually happens where you've got a smaller front or space to fit another unit. So how does that look like? So here we've got these Romans here alongside of this engagement here. They're not part of the engagement, they're not touching or anything. Now, they're obliged to face a foe because there is a foe to their front, but they're not locked in by proximity yet. If they move though, they are obliged to face an enemy. You could, however, instead, order them to go support this unit. And in this case, if they all just sidestepped over like so, they are allowed to join that unit as a support. If they do that, however, you'll notice their center fronts line up. What does that mean? That means they become a fighting unit. However, if they decide to support in this manner, they count as not having charged, and they don't get a charge bonus or any weapon bonus or anything like that adding to the fight. So there is kind of a weird way that he's off to the side and he goes into support like that that doesn't count as a charge, and then he becomes a fighting unit. Does that make sense? That's one of the weird things in the book that I've seen. I probably wouldn't do this because I'd probably risk giving them an order and saying something like, charge that Italian unit is probably what I do. They're in the front quarter here, so they'd have to move into a charging position, and then I just let them charge, okay? So I think it's kind of weird. They can legally go in to support them, but especially any troop that is able to fit in there and do a charge, why not try it? I mean, you'd get +1 to hit, you would be more likely to hurt your foe. But I guess it's situational in any case. Now this doesn't happen often either, but it can certainly happen where you have a unit that is in a supportive position, but he's between two fighting units, okay? In this scenario, they are fighting both sides, okay? They're fighting they're adding their support attacks to both sides of the combat. So what would happen is when they're divvying up their attacks, they would throw half on this side and half on that side. And I'm not going to portray this with my models here. I'm not going to show this with my models here, but there's the rare chance, maybe it's because people only use a single line, a single rank for their units or something like that. There's rare chances that two units on a flank look like they could be supporting a single unit. If that happens, choose the unit that is closer to the enemy. And finally, open order units can also support formed units. What happens is that when they move into support, one model will touch the flank, either flank or the rear, like so, and one model has to be touching. Then it would be something like this, okay? This Velite's in the front, but the rest of the guys are just loosely placed in the back, and they're adding attacks to that engagement there. It could be the flanks, it could be the rear in that situation. Now, if these guys in the back are charged at all, except that they suddenly become a fighting unit for being charged, then they would do what they do for open order units getting charged. They kind of form up in kind of a semi-pseudo battle line, still separated, and that's how they would be fighting. So they can still be charged if they are in a supportive role. And remember, if these guys do join an engagement as the fighting unit, they cannot be supported, okay? So say that this unit beats them off, okay, and he stays behind, he can't support this unit if they're suddenly fighting something in as the main fighting units, okay? Just a note, when you are doing support attacks, when these units have moved up and they're supporting a friendly unit in combat, units that are supporting for hitting the enemy, as I said, they use short range attacks. They don't get a bonus for charging ever, okay? So support units don't benefit from charging. They don't get to use their weapons special abilities, like for example, Romans have a Pila. If they charge or fight an enemy to their front, they get to do a -1 morale to the enemy in the first round of combat to represent their throwing their Pila and wrecking their morale. If Romans are supporting, they don't get to use that Pila, okay? So they're just adding short range attacks unmodified. Normally, if you're a fighting unit and you've charged or you're winning, you get +1 to hit. Supports don't get that. They just use their regular value unmodified. Other modifications will apply though. If you are shaken or disordered and you are supporting, you're going to be -1 to hit. Now I've seen some arguments for and against this, but do units in support get affected by other hand-to-hand combat modifiers? The rulebook does state on page 69 that it does. It says other hand-to-hand combat dice modifiers apply as normal. For example, if the unit is disordered or shaken. Are these guys -1 to hit because they're support? Because normally if they're open order, they're -1 to hit if they get into fighting. I'm gonna say no. And why do I say no? It's because they're not technically the attackers. They're supporting. I think those rules were meant for the fighting units. And the way that it seems, it kind of seems weird to me that these guys are supporting, but they're not directly fighting. They're adding in attacks. So I don't make. I tried a few games with it, but I don't put -1 to the open order units that come in for their modifier and attacking. I don't put in the flank or rear charge, like a fighting unit. If a fighting unit was, say, let's say that this unit here was flanked like so, he'd be -1 to hit this guy. I don't give the -1 to the support unit because for me, they're not really the ones being flanked. They are the ones adding attacks to this unit here. And I mean, they're not halved either. Like this unit could only put half of his attack on a flank. They don't. They just put all their support attacks in the flank. So I think that if a unit is in a supportive role, only the shaken and disorder come into play for modifiers. And yeah, I think that's how it's supposed to work out. If you don't agree with me, you can always tell me in the comment section below. We've had a lot of discussions online how it works. I just think that it's just shaken and disordered that'll affect the modifiers of support. So when you add attacks to a combat from support, it's treated just like any normal fighting attack. You roll on the dice, and then you would see if they save, if they make the morale saves or not. It's just adding attacks using the short range value to a fight. Okay, so I won't add any weapon bonuses to this. I'll just use what we've gone through so far. This small unit has charged them, and it's the Romans' turn. Let's let the Romans roll first. So they have a attack value of 5. Their clash is 5. So they have 5 dice. They charge, so they're going to roll on a 3 and up, or they're going to hit. Okay, that's 3 hits struck against these guys here. Before we see if they save these, let's add in the support attacks. This unit here has 2 for support attacks. So they roll, and they are hitting on a 4 and up. They're not hitting on a 3 and up. They didn't do the charging. They're just supporting. They don't get a +1 to support if they've charged. So 4 and up, that's really good for support. 2 more hits. These guys also add their attack value, which is also a short range attack value too. I should say that they use their short range value here for the support attacks. These guys also have a short range of 2. They roll 4 and up is really good. So that's a whole bunch of hits on this medium infantry unit here. Now these guys, after all of the attacks go on them and the support attacks are calculated up, have to make 7 saves. Their armor value is 5 and up normally. I didn't add Pila, so we won't worry about that. 5 and up, do they save? They save 1, They saved 2. Okay, so they only saved 2. And they're taking 5 casualties there from that engagement. Alright, so I hope all of those examples there are clear enough, and what I've stated today was helpful. If you guys have any questions or want to see more videos like this, please subscribe and like this video. When I say subscribe, I mean subscribe to the channel, like the video, and we will see you guys on the next one, which we will be doing, and it's going to be combat results, I believe. Yes, we're getting into combat results and break tests next time. So thank you all for watching, and we will see you again later.